U.S. Senator Roy Blunt is with us this morning. Roy, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Tom. How are you this morning?
Doing fine. It was great seeing you at the parade on Saturday. We were over there at the MC table, and you came walking by, and we were hollering out to you. How was your weekend in Columbia for homecoming?
It was great. It was great. I have been holding my breath every week to see how far we could go in the SEC without having something bad happen. And of course, it did happen at the game. But I'm proud of the Tigers. You know, they're a team that's playing with the guys that are able to play. And who would have thought we could be 7-1 this late into the season? But the homecoming parade was great, and the weather couldn't have possibly been better for a Saturday in October for homecoming.
It was absolutely beautiful. And, of course, the sad news we then entered the week with the former Representative Ike Skelton of Missouri passing away, and I'm sure you'd like to make a comment or two on that at this time.
Well, I would. Ike Skelton was a good friend of mine for a long time. Even after he left the Congress, we talked many times about defense and what was happening in Missouri. I said on Sunday when I learned of Ike's death that nobody in the Congress, nobody in a generation was more committed to the defense of the country or those who defend it than Ike Skelton was, and we will miss him, but he made a big imprint on our history, which he loved, and on our country, which he loved, and I'm grateful that we had Ike Skelton to be a part of our delegation and a great citizen of our state for a long time. I was just with him actually a couple of 3 weeks ago at the rededication of the Jackson County courthouse, where he and I both spoke on about maybe the 75th anniversary or some anniversary of the day President Truman, as the presiding commissioner, then called the presiding judge, would have been there to dedicate that courthouse. And actually, Ike Skelton was the last member of Congress that Harry Truman knew and or at least asked to run for the Congress, and I've heard Ike tell that story lots of times, and so that was and I have Harry Truman's old office in the United States Senate, the office he used for the 10 years he was senator and the 82 days he was vice president, and that's a real honor for a Missourian as well.
Great bit of history all tied in there, no doubt about it. U.S. Senator Roy Blunt with us this morning. Now, we appreciate the fact that every few weeks we get together and have a chance to talk. A few weeks ago, we were talking, and it was while the government shut down and that whole stalemate was underway. We have not talked to you since the vote. And, we had a call this morning from one of our listeners, Mark, that said, and I'm just going to quote him, Roy, he said, I feel like Senator Blunt turned his back on us and let us down with that vote. And I think there's a feeling of that goes through when we see people like, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz voting one direction on that and you voting a different direction. How do you explain your vote on that ended the government shutdown?
Well, I don't have any reason to criticize anybody else's vote, and whether it was Marco Rubio or my, so you have to do what you think is the right thing to do. My belief actually is that the hard vote was clearly the vote to reopen the government. The easy vote, in my view, was the vote to say, hey, I know we're going to reopen the government, so I don't have to be part of that. And I just decided when I went to Washington some time ago that if there was a hard vote that had to be taken, and I thought it was the right thing to do, I was going to do it. And in the long course of my votes for Missourians, if at some time they think that doesn't even up in a way that they're happy with, I'm sorry about that, because I'm really trying to do my best to represent our state and do the right thing. I thought the shutdown was a distraction from all of the problems the president had that, frankly, he was dealing with, and we were benefiting from people looking at the IRS and Benghazi and the health care bill until the shutdown, and then everything focused on the shutdown. And by the way, the shutdown is never a good idea. We always pay the people who don't work. That's always been the case every time there was a shutdown. So you have the expense of shutting down the government. You have the expense of starting the government back up. And then you go back and you pay people who, of course, they have bills. I'm not saying they shouldn't be paid. But nobody has the benefit of what the government should be doing. Now, if they're the things the government shouldn't do, I think we should stop doing them. but I haven't really talked to very many people who said we shouldn't have a government anymore or the government shouldn't do its job. Interestingly, once the government got opened up again, an awful lot of discussion about the problems that we're going to see with the president's health care plan. But the other thing that we talked about when I was on the other day, Tom, this idea that somehow if you didn't fund the government, it would defund Obamacare. The headline in lots of papers on October 1 was government shutdown, and somewhere else on that same page, Obamacare launches. There was never a connection between funding the government and funding Obamacare, because Obamacare, while I voted against it and been one of its harshest critics, is mandatory spending. It is spending that doesn't require the government to be open or the appropriations bills to be passed for this health care plan to move forward, and it did. So for your listeners who said, should have kept the government shut down so that we wouldn't have Obamacare was going whether the government was running or not. The things that weren't going were civilian employees in the military and other things that people do expect their government to do.
It is 7:45. U.S. Senator Roy Blunt with us. Brad Trinago.
Senator Waller may or may not have been a connection specifically between the shutdown and Obamacare. House Republicans were trying to use that as some sort of stand anyway and trying to prove a point about how they didn't support it. So how do you...
That's right, and I voted for every single thing that House Republicans sent to the Senate.
Mm-hmm. Now,
when it came time to open the government, all three of the top leaders of House Republicans in the House voted like I did.
Mm-hmm. So how do you...
for everything that House Republicans sent over, but we do not control the government. We control 1/2 of 1/3 of the government. And for those who love the Constitution, 1/2 of 1/3 of the government doesn't run the government as much as I'd like for it to.
So what's the plan now for those of you that are against Obamacare to continue that fight? How do you approach that?
You know, I think the more people know about Obamacare, the less they're going to like it. I've been predicting that for some time, and, you know, the last week, and by the way, it's not all about the website. The website's the easiest thing that they're ever going to be asked to do, and it will eventually work. And it's an embarrassment to them and the country that they can't make the website work. But what people are going to begin to find out is what I've been saying all the time, that the government trying to manage 16% of the economy and everybody's health insurance is going to create problems that people will not want once they figure it out. And the front page of paper after paper this morning was insurance plans being canceled, thousands of people losing their insurance every day because of Obamacare. The quicker people realize what this really is all about, the more likely we have a chance to improve the old healthcare system that was the best healthcare system in the world, but it wasn't perfect, and there were ways to improve it. And I've spent a lot of time on this program and others talking about what those are. You know, more fair tax treatment for everybody. If you buy your own insurance, you should do it with pre-tax dollars, just like people that get it at work, buying across state lines. More choices instead of less choices. What you're seeing with the president's plan now is that they're dictating the choices because they know better than anybody else if you ask them what you and I should do about our health care, and that's just not true.
Senator Blunt, you and I are in absolute agreement on the fact that the problems with Obamacare are a lot more than just the technical issues with the website so far, although that is a symptom of a government that's too big, trying to handle something that's too big, that they don't know what they're doing. But when you look at the other things that people are going to really find, and I hope you and I can stay focused on this and make sure other people are following it, you look at the website, healthcare.gov, and then from there, branch off and start paying attention to things like healthcare premiums going up, insurance options being limited, the reduction in hours at work. We're all going to find out Obamacare is much, much worse than most people had any idea it was going to be.
Right. It's bad for our economy, as I've been saying for years it would be, and it's bad for our health care. And the quicker we find that out, again, the more we have a chance to go back and improve the old system. But, the insurance companies are deciding they don't want to be in the business, the insurance business. Doctors are selling their practices to hospitals. People aren't going into specialty medicine. All of the bad things that I've been predicting, now more and more people are seeing. And on the website, which you and I are in total agreement on that, I just want to be sure that we don't allow the website to become the proxy for whether Obamacare is working or not. Anybody should be able to make the website work, and it will eventually work. But I said at a news conference yesterday, a leadership conference in the Senate, that there'll be a time when the administration will be wishing for the good old days when the only thing people were upset about was the website, because people are going to be outraged when they find out the reality of this plan that is very dependent on young, healthy people buying insurance at higher rates than they've ever seen before, We're seeing that happen in pricing. By the way, and on the website, the people that are sick, like the 4,500 people on the high-risk pool in Missouri, by the way, there was a way to deal with pre-existing conditions before this. It was what we call the high-risk pools. We could have expanded those. 4,500 people in Missouri got in that insurance pool after they had an illness. They're all going to be looking for insurance between now and January 1, and they're all going to do whatever it takes to stay on the website or whatever to get insurance. The healthy person was kind of marginally wondering about the young healthy person, whether they really wanted to do this or not. They're the ones that the website will have an impact on, because they'll think, well, hey, I didn't think I wanted to do this anyway. I've already given up on the income to even run a website, let alone to be responsible for your health insurance.
Well, what is the next thing that you see? I mean, you have the pulpit to preach from, as I do, about things like the problems with Obamacare. As one of our lawmakers in Washington, what's the next thing that you can possibly do to help us out? Is there anything that you or the body can do to help us out of this crap hole that we're in?
Well, if there's a postponement effort, I'll be. And there is, and if there's a vote, I'll be part of that vote. How you can postpone the penalty for employers that says they don't have to provide insurance, but still have the penalty for individuals that said they have to have it. It's an odd world where Barack Obama is trying to protect corporations and businesses and doesn't care about individuals. And I think that's the next thing that's likely to happen, a postponement in the individual penalty. At the same time, these rules and regulations are going into effect, and so people are going to be finding out, just like the literally millions of people that I'm confident will get notices that their individual policy no longer qualifies, and whatever they would have to replace it with, in almost all cases, is going to cost substantially more. Then we can have this debate based on the facts rather than the president's repeated promise that if you like your insurance, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. In St. Louis, in our state, the biggest insurance provider doesn't have access, chose not to have, for whatever reason, doesn't have access to the biggest hospital system. The 13 hospitals at Barnes Jewish Hospital aren't available under the biggest insurance provider's policy. So the hospital may have gone to for generations, the doctor you may have gone to for years, very likely will not be available to you, and the hollowness in the president's promise, which he made over and over again, if you like your insurance, you can keep it, people are going to find out that just simply was never true.
It's 7:53, U.S. Senator Roy Blunt with us. I know that generally we finish up at this time. I have a couple of calls holding. Do you have time to take a couple?
I've got an event in the office this morning where people come in, anybody that's in Washington on Wednesday morning, and I've got to go to that. I could probably take one call if you want to decide.
Let's take one, and we'll make it quick then if we can. Rick, quickly, you're on with Senator Blunt, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Blunt, I'm wondering when one of our politicians is going to step up and demand some accountability from Barack Obama on Benghazi and every other scandal that he's involved in. Our president doesn't know anything about anything, and he's got all this cover from the media. We need somebody with a strong voice. Hopefully he'll be from Missouri to get to the bottom of some of these things.
Rick, thank you for the call. Roy?
Well, I hear you, Rick, and, I think one of the things, again, that we drew attention in October with a plan that couldn't work from things like Benghazi and the IRS. This president apparently knows less than any president ever about what's going on. He never knows. He didn't know about the NSA program where we were accessing the phone calls of other governments, which governments have done that and do that for a long time. He didn't know that there was a problem at Benghazi. He didn't know for days afterward that there was no riot. Even 60 Minutes, which has never been very critical of this president, had a in-depth look at Benghazi over the weekend, and the president needs to be held accountable. There is no doubt about that. And here's an incident that happened right before the election. It is clear, and it was clear at the time, and I said at the time, over and over again, and on the Senate floor, I believe, but I was on the Intel committee at the time, and what I could talk about, I was talking about, which was it was absolutely clear that there was no riot. We had access to the people. I asked the CIA director within 72 hours, well, what did the people say who was there? And you know what the CIA director told me? They were all in Germany by then. They were the people that lived were taken to Germany. Well, the FBI's interviewed them, and they won't tell us. The FBI won't tell the CIA what they learned about this. It was nonsense from the very start, and 4 Americans died. And it's one of many things the president apparently didn't know about and wasn't interested enough in to find out about.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Roy, that there are a lot of people that agree with me back here in Missouri that we would love to hear you continue to squawk about these problems with Barack Obama not knowing anything. And the Benghazi is a perfect example of something that makes us sick. So we appreciate you being there in Washington and from your position to be able to continue to shine a light on these issues with our president. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. Good to talk to you. I'll be with you again soon.